Magic makers. Today we are talking about a word that I feel has become the new buzzword. Back when many of you started dieting, it was you were afraid of fat, and then we were afraid of carbs, then it was sugar, then it was dairy, and then I don't know. We've been afraid of a lot of stuff over the last couple of years. Today, I think the biggest buzzword out there is cortisol. So, what I done, like I always do, is find somebody who can give you the straight answers about cortisol, what it is, what it's about. Should you really fear it? And is it the devil that we've been told that it is? So please welcome to the show, Miss Rachel Sanders.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
you know, I've wanted to talk about this for a while because, you're on social media just like I am. And a lot of 9 times out of 10, someone will post in a Facebook group, I want to lose 400 pounds in 4 days. What should I do? Got to do a workout that doesn't increase your cortisol. You got to lower your cortisol. You got to do this with your cortisol. And I'm like, girl, do you even know what cortisol is? And so let's just start there. What exactly is cortisol?
So cortisol is what many people refer to as your stress hormone. And it is one of the major hormones. So if you think about hormones in like a pyramid, let's go back to like the 1990s food pyramid. Imagine that. Cortisol, insulin, and oxytocin are the three at the bottom. And then all of the other hormones layer up on top of that. So you can imagine that if your cortisol or your stress hormone is out of balance, it really impacts a ton of different processes and things in your body, from hormones to belly fat, as you mentioned earlier, to just overall how you feel, how you look, and how you're showing up in the world. And what your cortisol is supposed to look like is it's actually a curve. So you want to have an optimal curve where cortisol is highest in the morning and then it slowly tapers down over the day. And one of the things that I've spent a lot of time working on is we actually looked at over 144,000 data points across various parts of the population on what that optimal curve looks like. And there is barriers around, all right, if you're within a healthy optimal curve, this is what it looks like. But most people are out of that curve.
Mm.
And taking myself specifically, my cortisol is actually too low in the morning. Fun fact, your cortisol can actually be too high or too low at different
Mm.
times during the day. Mine is too low in the morning. It's fine middle of the day, and then it's actually too high at night. So it
Huh.
does the opposite of what it's supposed to do, which is a sign of being in fight or flight for a lot longer and just like a constant fight or flight state of stress mode
Mm.
than what it should be. And that's what it looked like about, let's call it 15 months ago when I really started on my own cortisol balancing journey. And
Mm.
I've since been able to better my points throughout the day.
All right, so let's go back. So, everyone's looking that when I cortisol is basically what wakes you up, if you will.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
So I'm looking that whatever time I wake up, I'm looking for cortisol to have that nice natural rise to be like, okay, let's get active, let's get more and more into the day. And then somewhere probably in the like mid to late afternoon, that bell curve starts to make that downward arc, if we will.
Correct.
And then by
Yep.
the time I'm ready to go to bed, I should be at, close to my low limit of cortisol.
Yep, exactly. And cortisol, the other point there is it's part of your sleep wake hormones. So your
Gotcha.
cortisol goes down, which means your melatonin can go up.
Gotcha.
So if your sleep wake hormones and your cortisol is balanced, then falling asleep, staying asleep should be relatively easy for you. But the other side of that cortisol issue that a lot of people don't talk about is actually sleep. So if your cortisol is out of
Gotcha.
whack during the day, it's really hard to sleep well at night.
So is that the wired yet tired kind of feeling that
Yep,
people have?
exactly.
All right. So then what are some of the things that truly cause your cortisol to get a little bit out of whack?
I mean, it's really anything that spikes your stress levels and your
Okay.
cortisol in your body. And there's a bunch of different things. One, stressful jobs.
Mm.
And especially women in their 30s plus, we're
Mm.
seeing this mental wellness crisis that people are experiencing. And a lot of it is because of just the world. Let's just call it
Yes.
the world.
Exactly.
Like there's everything from like really stressful news cycles to the
Hmm.
pandemic that we all went through to continuous scrolling and comparison on
Yes.
social media to dealing with mounting responsibilities at home, whether you're a
Yeah.
parent or you're taking care of your aging parents, to growing responsibilities at work. We're just in this world, even light. So, what is the light that we're looking at in the morning
Mm.
to the light that we're exposed to at night? We're in this world of constant disruptions that is making it harder for our bodies to regulate themselves
Yeah.
in the
It's
way that they should.
and I love how you said that. Like, I mean, that was a myriad of things that can cause our, cortisol to just bounce all over the place. And it's really funny because I started wearing this Aura ring, and one of the things that measures your stress. And sometimes I'll look at it and it'll say like I was stressed, and I'm like, huh, I was noon. I was doing a podcast. I didn't feel stressed, right? Because
Right.
it's like all of us think to ourselves what we know in our mind, like when we're at like the high end of our stress, and we
Hmm.
know we think that's what stress is. But what you just described, like I could have just saw something on social media that pissed me off. That's a stressor.
Hmm.
I could have, got a phone call that I had to go race to my kid's school. That's a stressor. I could have
Hmm.
got walked into my kitchen after I cleaned it up and it's all like a hot mess again. That's a stressor. And for women, we downplay so many things unless it's literally like a 5 alarm ringing bell. We don't think it's stress. We're like, that's just my life. That's
Yeah,
just how things are.
there's so many hidden stressors, and that's the one of the biggest things since I started diving into this space is a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not stressed," but their
Mm-hmm.
cortisol is completely out of balance. Especially so food can also be a really hidden stressor causing tons of inflammation in the body. And if you're looking at the high processed, high sugar foods, glucose spikes can actually cause cortisol spikes.
Yeah.
So if you're continuously eating the high processed, like high sugar foods, you actually could be creating this cortisol imbalance in your body where you don't necessarily feel it as stress, but maybe you feel it as gut issues or skin issues or
Um,
trouble losing weight, or you're extra moody, but you don't know why,
mm.
or that sleep issue is coming up. So you don't feel that like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed, but your body is showing signs of that imbalance.
And I love everything that you just said. So we're gonna unpack all of that because literally all of that you said could be a podcast. So let's start with the blood sugar spike because I don't think many of us contribute stress and blood sugar as like, correlating with each other. We think, oh, my blood sugar spikes because I eat something. We don't ever think that, oh, my cortisol could spike as well.
Yeah, so in terms of blood sugar, when you're eating something, you're basically, there's a lot of mechanisms around it. I'm not the best scientist to tell you all of those individual processes, but what will happen, especially in the high processed foods, you'll eat something, it spikes your blood sugar. Your body is unable to bring your glucose down as well as if you were eating something that was not going to spike your blood sugar as much. This creates an excess of cortisol in the body that is just continuously becomes a problem because then you have excess cortisol, and cortisol actually causes cravings for unhealthy foods, so our fats and our sugars,
Mm.
or our carbs and our sugars. And so you just get stuck in this cycle.
Yeah. No, and I like that because typically if I am in a stress mood, I'm not reaching for that banana. I'm reaching for the chips and the brownies and all the other non-healthy foods that are just going to be a systemic cycle going on and on and on again. So now the second thing you said, well, maybe it wasn't the second, but you definitely said this one, sleep. So many of my ladies, yes, I'm calling you out, sleep. Sleep is something that is an elusive thing for them. It's either having trouble getting themselves to sleep and staying asleep, or just not getting a really good night's sleep. Like I felt like I slept, but I didn't sleep.
Sleep, it's digging into the research, 64% of women aren't getting adequate daily sleep.
Mm,
And it's shocking. And the other thing is we didn't talk a little bit more about my background, but as a founder of a company who's really serving these women, and formulating products to really support a lot of these problems like sleep, stress, and focus issues that are coming out of cortisol imbalance. Sleep is one of the number one things that women, especially as we get older, deal with. I am a like 100% someone who saw this where up until my like late 20s, I was a great sleeper. I could sleep
Mm,
all night. I wouldn't wake up. I could take naps. Nothing would disrupt my sleep. And then all of a sudden, I hit 30, had babies, got even older, and my sleep is it's hard to sleep. And very few brands, people, solutions are really trying to help women sleep better
mm,
naturally.
yeah.
So there's the prescription medications. People love to take melatonin.
Yes.
Melatonin is not the best thing for you. It can disrupt your body's like biological processes. There's also a lot of people, myself included, who if they take melatonin, it's like they have the worst night's sleep of their life. They wake up like super groggy the next day.
Yeah.
They're unable to function. It's almost like they've drugged themselves. And so those women especially are just looking for ways to support better sleep in a natural way.
Right.
And movement, nutrition, there's supplements like adaptogens that you can take. Magnesium's another one that really support a more restful sleep
Right.
in a way that works with women's bodies.
Yeah, and it's funny that you talked about the melatonin because that's another thing that like party talk. Oh, I got a shitty night's sleep. Have you been taking the melatonin? And we don't realize that it's like I just can't go to my local pharmacy and pick up whatever milligram. Like it is this like kind of science experiment of how much I need in order for it to not make me feel like a drugged out zombie the next day.
Yeah. And if you are constantly taking melatonin, I have seen research and talked to some functional um, medical doctors and functional nutritionists as well that it can really disrupt your body's regular production of
Right.
melatonin. And so it's definitely useful in certain circumstances. Jet lag is one of them, where
Right.
especially if you're traveling for multiple hours via plane, taking melatonin can be really helpful for sleep in that sense, but it's generally not the best thing to take every single night unless
Right.
you have certain health conditions.
And I want you guys to hear what she just said. Not every single night. If we all have those moments, like we all have those moments in time. Yes, jet lag, time shifts, the time zone change, whatever. That's moments in time. If I'm struggling every single day, that's a red flag,
Mhm.
right? That's a red flag that there's something else going on, and it is a sign to dig into it, to
Mhm.
dig into the bigger problem. And since you brought up your company, one of the things I like about your company is that it's products that support, not mask. And
Correct.
all the messaging around it isn't like, take this band-aid and put it over the bleeding wound and look away. It's like, here are your issues, here's how we can support you, but it's also giving open you up to be more curious about how we got here, which is
Exactly.
what I loved about it. And that's why one of the reasons why I want to have you on the show. So what made you, I'm sure there's a zillion people out there who would be like, we'd love to have you, slap your name on our stuff. What was it about you that said, you know what, I got to do it my own way. I got to do it this way.
There's so much in the market that is just simply not designed for a lot of the women that we're talking about, right? Like I mentioned it earlier, but women, especially over 30, are experiencing this mental wellness crisis, and they need products that are effective, that are science-backed, and that are accessible. So
Mm,
ones that, from a price point perspective, they're not guarded by whether it's price or clinicians or things
yeah.
like that. So I was felt really strongly about one, bringing products that were effective at first dose. So it's not something you have to take constantly
Yeah.
to see the benefits. I mean, if you take it longer, you're going to see more benefits, but I feel the benefits from taking my sleep drink that day. I start to feel tired and it allows me to fall into sleep within 30 minutes. And so it's really important. Look, we're busy humans, right? Like we're doing all the things. We don't have time for 45-minute, hour-long routines every single night or every single morning. We need products that are built that fit within our busy life. And I just didn't see it on the market. And
Mm,
that's another like part of not only the company, but something I stand for really strongly is women need simple tips and
Yes.
tricks, habits that can actually fit in their daily lives, whether they're a new mom and or just a parent or human running around trying to fit all the things between work and wellness and life into their 24 hours.
Correct. Yeah. No, you had me at simple, let's be honest. By now we've done, I don't even know how many complicated things. And guess what? We ain't doing those anymore because they were too complicated. You keep bringing back this mental wellness. Like life is going to life at us. And if I try to be doing Jenga, it's not going to take much for that Jenga to just all fall apart and me to feel overwhelmed. And then I stop. And then I'm off to find the next
Yeah,
complicated thing
exactly.
or the next band-aid so that I don't have to deal with it until I'm physically like gushing, uh, gushing blood.
Exactly.
Now, the other thing that a lot of my clients hear about, and you also hear about on the socials, is cortisol inducing workouts. That, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this kind of workout, too much cortisol. Talk to me about that. Many of the women who are listening here, you don't have to tell us that exercise is a thing that we should be doing. I struggle with some people who are a little on the over exercise portion of the program, and then some who are like just hearing this fear mongering and are just so afraid that to do anything that elevates their heart rate because it's gonna spike my cortisol.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And over like underlining health is personal. So you really need to figure out what your cortisol is. Is it even in balance? Do you even need to be thinking about it? My
Mm.
bet is yes, it's probably in balance, and yes, you need to be thinking about it, but it's possible that you don't. Um, and just figuring out where you are. Like, what's your biology? What are your goals? What do you need to be thinking about? And then from there, make some decisions that work for you. Generally, it has been shown that if you're doing a lot of high intensity cardio, that is going to be a problem for people with imbalanced cortisol. And the recommendations that I've gotten as someone who was doing a lot of high intensity cardio is to switch some of those cardio days to strength training.
Hmm.
There are also a myriad of other benefits that are coming out in research around strength training, especially for women as we age. It's really important for overall hormonal balance. It's important for blood sugar balance. It helps keep our joints and our bones strong as we age going forward. It's really helpful as you think about body comp as you age. I
Mm.
have talked to women in their 70s plus, and they're like, look, my doctor's telling me to go on a strength training program.
Yep.
And so the earlier that you start that, it's going to have not only benefits with cortisol, but just overarching benefits as you think about aging. So I've switched to doing 3 to 4 days a week of strength training. I still love my cardio for mental reasons. I love doing a workout class occasionally. I have a Peloton, I'll go on that. But I'm conscious about how much like high intensity interval training or high intensity work I'm going to do because I don't want to spike my cortisol too much, but I still will do it occasionally. And one way that I've actually thought about how do I kind of combine it is how do I play while exercising? And for me, that's playing tennis. That's very intense cardio,
Ah,
but
yeah.
but you get some like relationship building, you get joy, you feel like you're playing. So it actually does a couple of different things at the same time. The other thing about like, let's talk about workouts and cardio or workouts and cortisol in general is workout timing.
Mm.
That's really important. So if you're an evening workout person and you're struggling to sleep, I would consider changing your workout timing to the morning or the afternoon because cortisol, working out, regardless of what your type of workout, it will spike your cortisol somewhat. And so if you're
Gotcha.
already dealing with cortisol imbalance and that's leading to sleep issues, the evening workout is going to make it harder. That's the only time you can work out. Like that's the only time you can work out, but that is something to think about. The other interesting thing that I've seen in research is where you work out. So
Mm.
if you're on a cortisol balancing journey, getting outside is really important. So that natural sunlight, we've heard about it in the morning. Natural sunlight hits your eyes, a lot of biological processes. It helps your cortisol naturally wake up in the morning. But even just being outside throughout the day, it helps overall with our sleep-wake hormones or cortisol. It helps with melatonin if you're doing it later. And so maybe thinking about how you can work out outside, like take a walk outside versus going to the gym and walking on a treadmill inside.
Gotcha. Now, when you talk about natural sunlight, I'm getting some semantics. So I always get a lot of questions, especially I live in New England. So, certain times of the month I'm hibernating, for
Yeah.
those hardy folk out there, peace. Um, is it literally, could I just be standing by my window, on a winter's day and still collect that same natural sunlight, or is it physically being outside?
Based on the experts I've talked to, it's physically being outside is
Okay.
the best thing that you can do. I'm from Connecticut, so I'm fully aware of what that looks like in the
Right.
winter.
Our 2 minutes of
So
summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The best is being outside. And even if it's cloudy or rainy, it's just getting outside.
Hmm.
And then if that doesn't work, standing by the window is better than doing nothing.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, the other thing that you talked about is that how, we've talked about cortisol levels. How would I know my cortisol levels? Is there a particular test I can take, or is there some way I can kind of start to track without some type of, blood test? I know I've taken a saliva test.
I view multi-point tests as the best way to do it because as we talked about in the beginning, your cortisol changes throughout the day. So if
Hmm.
you do a single point blood test, for example, you're
Yeah.
only looking at one point throughout the day. So if that point is fine, then you'll maybe assume that your cortisol is fine. Versus if you're looking at it throughout the day,
Mm.
you'll see is your cortisol changing and like flowing the way that it should. Um, that often comes with saliva. My company routine has a cortisol test. We do a 3-point test that looks at morning, afternoon, and nighttime. That's how I track mine. And there are other great tests out there as well.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that at point in time, because as we talked about before, if say I'm going to get my physical, or actually going to get the blood work done, and I had a stressful drive, my cortisol could be through the roof. And then, but I'm normally uh like
Yeah.
I could have a normal bell curve, but that could be like some crazy spike that can throw me. Well, yeah, they're making different decisions. Had it just been, oh, she woke up and it looks really good. Oh, she got that spike. Something must have happened, and then she went back down.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's we always recommend for people to take it on a normal day,
Yeah.
whatever normal looks like for you. So if your kids are waking up at 6:30 in the morning and you like immediately are getting jumped on and your cortisol spiking, but that happens every day, then that's a normal day. If you're typically cool and then for some reason you have an emergency at work or something like really sets you off that day, we don't recommend taking it that specific day. It's more like whatever is a normal course.
And so, I just want to circle back and touch on a few of, like, the common things that I might notice or might start to ask myself, do I have high cortisol, especially as I'm scrolling through the socials? What are some, other than sleeping, what are some other signs that I might have some high cortisol?
Weight gain, especially in the midsection and
Mhm.
or trouble losing weight is a
Mhm.
big sign. I
Okay.
actually saw this as I was on my weight loss journey postpartum after baby number 2. I was doing all the things. So hitting the steps, like eating well, doing the workouts, and I lost some weight and then all of a sudden I started plateauing. And then I took this cortisol test and saw those original results, started focusing on my cortisol, and all of a sudden my weight loss journey got infinitely easier
Right.
because I was really like paying attention to that hormonal piece of the weight loss. It's definitely a piece of it. It's not a
Yeah.
magic pill. And then we also, as we think about like ways to balance cortisol naturally, adaptogens are a really great way, especially ashwagandha, rhodiola. We have a blend of 4 adaptogens that really help on a daily basis bring your body back to balance faster. So it's a piece of how are you thinking about your movement? What are you eating? What's your lifestyle look like? Like sleep routines, light, everything we've kind of talked about is all matters when it comes to cortisol balancing. But in terms of symptoms, tired but wired, that's a symptom. Sleep issues, whether it's hard to fall asleep, waking up in the middle of the night, the like 2, 3 a.m. wake up and trouble going back to sleep. That's a big cortisol imbalance
Yep.
sign. Digestive issues,
Yep.
gut issues, brain fog, and mental clarity. So if you're someone who used to be really good at being able to focus, but you're struggling, you're procrastinating, that can be a sign of cortisol imbalance as well.
One thing I want to circle back to, like everything I think you've said, we've all kind of heard about and linked to cortisol. But the two things you said that I don't think many people, again, another dismissal thinking, you know, so many, you said, oh, this baby number two, I struggled to get the weight off. And other women, in their 40s, the weight just kind of felt like it just came on overnight. And you keep looking in the mirror and you're like, why isn't it happening fast? I'm doing all the things. And then, like, 3 days later, why isn't it happening? And you just kind of get caught in this like thought process. And that just like is just putting, fire onto fire with the thinking of that. And so you talked about your adaptogens. Can the adaptogens help people kind of get out of that ruminating of like, why isn't this happening fast enough? I should be losing 2 pounds a week. I should be this. I should be that.
It can definitely help with your overall stress, like you're feeling irritability, overwhelm, just kind of how your overall like mood is feeling. Our blend specifically works really well around like calming and relaxing. It's
Mm,
almost like having a glass of wine after you put your kids to bed. It's
mm,
kind of that feeling that has. Um, but the overarching like how can we think about building a plan that works for me now is really, and
yes.
then where does that like adaptogen blend come in with that? So you're supporting yourself with supplements, but what else you're doing? And I think one of the things too is as women get older is what used to work just doesn't work anymore. And that is a like complete mental like
Oh, screws with
gymnastics.
you. It's
Yeah.
like screws with you.
And so, like, recognizing it's like, okay, I'm older. And so, what does that mean? That
Mm,
means eating more protein, really focusing on protein. There's research around like fiber.
yep.
How are you supporting your gut? Like, what are you doing to work out? Are you getting your steps in? Are you like in constant like fight or flight because you're doing high intensity workouts 6 days a week? Like,
Right.
what have you tried to switch versus what you used to switch in your 20s to get those pounds off?
Right. Or it's like, I always say that you're chasing a former version of yourself.
Yep.
And it's like, I think about what I was able to do at 25 and I look back and I'm like, damn, like that, like, who was I? Like, if I tried to take on that schedule right now, I think I would be like broken by like two in the afternoon. And,
Yeah, exactly.
and
And
so
oh,
go
sorry, go
for it.
ahead.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say, and if you think about social media too, and this is one of the other like mental gymnastics, is there are so many 20-year-olds or like not even 20-year-olds on TikTok and on Instagram talking about like how they're losing weight, what they're doing every day, what their routine looks like. And you're over here, like, I don't know if you're a mom. I'm a mom of two. I have a full-time job, and I'm over here. I'm like, how do you have time for that? A, and B, like, they never had babies. Their bodies didn't change. Like, they're not dealing with all these hormone things. So, we have to remember like who we're taking advice from and who we're seeing too, because 20-year-olds giving health and skincare advice isn't necessarily going to apply to 40-year-olds.
It's right, Rachel. Like, again, and this could be a whole podcast. The one thing that I struggle with is that when I see, even if you're, yes, absolutely, a 20 something's telling me what I should be doing at 40, I was like, first of all, girlfriend, you don't have a family and you don't even understand like the inter dynamics of trying to keep this whole life going. That's one. Two, even 40 something year old women who've never struggled with their weight. I'm like, you're lean and you're just trying to get leaner versus the woman who comes to me and she's 50 pounds overweight and she's just crying and looking at this woman and I'm like, I go, she's not your person because she's never put on 50 pounds in her life, so she doesn't understand the struggle when you were a size 10 and now you're a size 20. She doesn't understand that struggle, and her doing intermittent fasting might have worked for her because she was trying to lose 10 pounds versus you trying to lose 50 pounds. So,
Mhm.
for those guys listening, it goes all the ways. It's like, I always tell people, find someone who is in your similar situation, your similar demographic. Are you a working mom with two young kids? Rachel is the girl you look to because she understands what it's like to balance two freaking kids and a full-time job versus someone who might be 35, doesn't have kids, doesn't understand, oh, I got to drive to gymnastics, then I got to go here, and then I go there, and oh crap, they want to eat. So, and oh yeah, I
Oh
got my
crap, they want to eat. Is that's like the story of your life as a parent, I think.
right, because it's like every time you turn around, someone wants a snack. You're like, wait, didn't we just have snack? Like, how long has it been since you ate last? Um, but
Exactly.
but I feel you on that, that it's like there's too much advice out there, and we don't one of my very first coaches, and I'm grateful that I had her at the beginning of this journey, because I could have like literally run down 500 different rabbit holes. She was like, you have to be like Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee is, for those guys who don't know, he was a martial artist, and he took from multiple martial arts disciplines, and he took what he needed. He didn't learn all of the disciplines. He took like, oh, this works for me, and this works for me, and this works for me, and he put it all together and created his own style. And I feel that has to be the way you look at nutrition, is that this is going to work for me, this is going to work for me, this is going to work for me. Rachel's supplement line, she has like 20 different products. Are we saying, here, we're going to send you the party pack of supplements? No, we're like, what do you need? Like, are you struggling with sleep? This is what we're going to focus on right now. Let's get this sleep under, and let's also talk about our life. And then when that's under control, we can come back to something else, versus like, I'm just going to take all these supplements and pray.
Exactly. And I think that the pandemic really helped with this shift. But the other thing that especially people who maybe never struggled with their health and then all of a sudden are starting to struggle, it's like they're kind of like, oh, but like, isn't someone else supposed to tell me what to do? Like, isn't this
Yes.
doctor or isn't this other person? And figuring out how to take control of your own health and do those experiments is actually really hard if you've never done it. And so that advice around, all right, what are like simple habits that you can try for a week? So, for example, there's a 20 something or like a 40 something biohacker man on scientists talking about all these things. It's going to take you 2 hours to do. All right, what's one of those 2 hours worth of things that you can try this week to see if it works? I
Yeah.
love like drinking, what I'm working on right now is drinking 40 ounces of water with electrolytes before I have my coffee. It takes like 2 minutes. It's a very simple shift,
Mm-hmm.
but hydration is really important for everything. So that's like one thing that I can try this week. And then, all right, does that work? Great. Does it not work? Okay, fine. Let's try something else. Like putting your phone down 30 minutes before bed so you stop scrolling.
Mm.
That's a 30-second thing to do just to try for a week. So it's like a little bit of a mindset shift. It's like I have to take control. It's like I also have agency here where I don't have to
Yes.
follow 100% of the protocol that someone else is doing. I can figure
Yes.
out what's working for my life in my season. And then especially for those folks with the weight loss, having lost having done the like I'm going to lose 10 pounds and then also having done the I have to lose over 50 pounds after baby number 2, the mindset between those two is vastly different.
Mm.
And the 50 plus pounds is like, this is going to take me a long time. So what can I do today that feels easy to get like one step further towards that goal instead of here's like 1,000 things that I have to start today, because it's never going to last. Like that just doesn't work. You can't be consistent with that for a long period of time.
Yeah, everything you said, I like, is my, like, you were just up on my pulpit. Like, let's choose easy. I don't know who started this, that we have to choose hard. Like, the hard path is going to guarantee
Men,
results. Yeah.
men.
But the flip side is when someone kind of challenges me, when I just say exactly what you said. Pick one or two things, give it a shot, see what works. If 40 ounces doesn't work for you before coffee, try 20. And then we can build to 40 ounces. But it's like, so many women will be like, I have to do this laundry list of things in order to earn whatever it is you're trying to earn. And I want to know who's that judge who's looking over your shoulder at that spreadsheet or that checklist or whatever, and telling you that, you've passed the test. Like, point that person out, because if that person is judging you, let's look at their damn list and see what they're getting done.
Exactly. And then what does that person who you think is judging you life actually look like? Does it look
Right.
like yours? Are they in the same season of life? Are they doing the same things? Do they have the same responsibilities? The answer is probably no. And so looking at it through the lens of that is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And now as we were talking about like cortisol, what are there like if I am still, living in my I'm going to argue for my limitations is what I'm getting at. Like, girl, you don't know. My life is my life. Are there any long-term uh things, detriments that I could have if I keep holding on to this cortisol beside the weight? Because somehow we could be like, oh, this 40 is just what happens. Are there any other, long-term downstream things that can happen to me if I hold on to too much cortisol?
Yeah, based on the research and a lot of the experts that I've talked to, things like leaky gut can happen.
Mm,
Cortisol also is a leading cause of inflammation, and inflammation in the body it has been linked to all sorts of chronic diseases when it comes to long-term issues. Um, if you look at cortisol as part of the overall sleep-wake cycle and basically your biological clock, it's called your circadian health.
mm,
Poor circadian health has been linked to everything from cancer to chronic diseases to um, if you're looking at like anxiety and depression. And so
uh,
it is not saying like your cortisol is imbalanced today, you're going to get cancer in 20 years, but
right.
it's a part of a system that
Hmm.
forces your body into a path that you probably don't want to be going down.
Yeah. And so the other, so which leads me down to this question of like, I might be like, the weight isn't too bad for me. But what are also, can cortisol also make my menopausal journey a little harder than it needs to be? Can it throw any of those kind of the estrogen, progesterone type hormones even more out of whack than they would be on a normal menopause journey?
I'm not an expert on menopause journey.
Right.
That being said, if you think about that hormone pyramid that we talked about before, cortisol is at the bottom and it throws the like sex hormones out of whack if that's out
Mhm.
of whack. And so if you're already dealing with hormonal imbalance, having your cortisol imbalanced is not going to be a good part of it. It
Yeah.
also, if you think about all of the symptoms that we talked about in cortisol imbalance, sleep issues, weight gain, gut problems, skin problems, like those are all amplified as we think
Right.
about the perimenopause and menopause period. And so if you can balance your cortisol and help with those symptoms, it would make sense that it would just help overall in the menopause journey.
And I'm glad you brought it back to that kind of food pyramid because it's kind of like if my pyramid is shaky on the bottom, as much as I try to stack stuff on
Mhm.
top, it's always going to have this like weak foundation. So it's like, I never thought of cortisol as being one of those foundational hormones, but it actually is because it's like it's what I need, or it was intended to help wake me up to get me out of danger.
Correct. Yeah, it's that fight or flight. I mean, for people who are like still sitting here and they're like, what is cortisol? It's that fight or flight that was originally built within our bodies to like run away from a lion. It's just in today's society, you can
Lions are
get stuck
everywhere.
in that in that fight or flight, and like lions are everywhere. They're on your phone, they're at your house, like they're at work. And that's really what that like feeling is.
And so one of the things that I've heard, and again, this could be, this is why we ask questions. So we talk about fight or flight. So typically our adrenals pump out the cortisol. And so at the same time as I'm pumping out the cortisol, is my pancreas also pumping out insulin to kind of give me that energy to run away from the lion? And so I've been so like if we are just so if my making these numbers up, people, because I don't know how this all works. So say in my body, I'm like lion. So everything goes up to like 100%. And then the lion doesn't come and it kind of slowly goes down. And then I see a lion again. And I never really ever get myself down to like zero. I don't know if that ever happens, but so elevated cortisol levels is always me kind of thinking lion, lion, lion. So my adrenals are always in that like kind of on. ish button. And so is my pancreas also pushing out the blood sugar as well to help give me the energy to run away from the lion?
Honestly, I don't know the best way to answer that. I don't know exactly those mechanisms. I'm
Okay.
happy to ask the folks who will know that and then get back to you on that answer.
Okay. But for just let's just take the blood sugar out. But cortisol, it's like your adrenals are like, oh, danger. We
Yep.
gotta help you get out of the way. So cortisol pumps up there. Let's say it pumps up at 100. And if we've never give cortisol that opportunity to kind of quiet back down, and we're always ringing that doorbell, eventually our adrenals start to um does it our adrenals like don't hear the doorbell anymore, or they're just like, girl, we're tired.
It's more of an exhaustion. And it even goes down to there's like specific health conditions where it's like your cortisol doesn't is like so low. It's like constantly like too low all the time. And it's a condition that like needs medical attention at that point. But
Hmm.
at that stage, you have been in fight or flight. So this like lion, lion, lion for so long that your body is honestly, it's just like exhausted.
Right. It's just like I want to, but I can't.
Mhm.
And so before, and like, of course, there was I had a woman on a podcast years ago that said this, and it just stuck with me. And she said, if we don't hear our body whisper, we can't hear it scream. So before we get to that far extreme where your body's like, girl, I'm tired, are there things that we experience when our bodies were like, you are asking way too much of me right now? Are there things that we feel when it comes to that cortisol?
I think we've talked about a lot of it, and it's really about listening to your body, right? So
Hmm.
if you're feeling off, like if you're extra overwhelmed, if you're moody, if you're irritable, if you're just not feeling like you used to, checking in on your hormones overall is a really great place to start.
Perfect. And so you mentioned that you have a test. Do I need to go to my doctor to get that done, or can I just go to your website and purchase it myself?
You can just go to the website and purchase it. It's all physician ordered, but
Hmm.
you can, as a consumer, you just go to our website at routine.co. You can purchase the cortisol test. It's also available on Amazon. And then you'll do the test. You get your results in about 5 to 7 days, and it's a full personalized dashboard. So it's a full readout of all the like what your results are, and then all your recommendations across nutrition, lifestyle, movement, sleep, supplementation to really help you with your cortisol balancing journey.
I love that. And so, like, if I'm just thinking, like, a couple of things you just said kind of hit home. Are there any, things that I can start to do right now to help lower my cortisol?
Yeah, I can share the things that I'm really focused on
Hmm.
right now that have helped me a lot. So we talked about them, but having a sleep routine, not a really long
Yes.
one, but just signaling to your body that you're going to sleep and trying to go to sleep and wake up around the same time, even on the
Hmm.
weekends.
Yep.
One of the biggest unlocks for me has been putting my phone down before I go to bed and trying not to do any blue light. So I'm not watching Netflix and then falling asleep to Netflix
Right.
because that really is harmful for that like sleeping. And sleep and cortisol, we've talked about a lot, are inherently linked. And so really paying attention to like that sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? Do you have your bedtime routine? Are you stopping the blue light at a certain period of time? Um, I really have seen a difference in strength with like my focus on strength training over the high intensity cardio and then also with walking. And I try to walk outside as much as I possibly can. Obviously, it's going to be dependent on where you live. And then if you can't walk outside, one of my biggest hacks that I've done this year is I got a walking pad. So like
Yep.
one of those inside walking pads, it folds up. It's very easy to fit really anywhere. And I'll often do like work calls or like watch TV, watch Netflix while I'm walking just to get in those extra steps because movement is really helpful. Adaptogens, I take them daily. So I take our stress mix daily, I take sleep mix daily, and then we also have a focus, which is really helpful when you're just trying to sit down and stop procrastinating, whether you're working or trying to stop procrastinating on all the various tasks you have to do at home. And then from an eating standpoint, really focusing on protein. So that is most of the research that is like 1 gram per body weight, or I've also heard per ideal
Yeah. Yeah.
body weight. And then trying to get that in the morning. I used to be an intermittent faster. I've stopped
Mm.
intermittent fasting. There's some research. It's mixed. Let's just say that on the
Yes.
intermittent
Yes.
fasting.
Agreed. It's
Um,
mixed.
Yeah, it's mixed, but I've switched from intermittent fasting to focusing on getting 30 to 40 grams of protein in the morning. That also helps stabilize blood sugar, which we talked about is a cortisol inducing problem if you're doing it. And then just really paying attention to nutrition. I am not the perfect eater. I will never admit to being the perfect eater, but I definitely try to focus on those lean proteins, get in my fruits and veggies, and stay away from processed food as much as possible. I am a mom. Like sometimes we order pizza and that's just the way it is.
Right.
But if you can try to do that like 80-20 and really focus on it, that really helps from a cortisol and inflammation perspective.
No, I absolutely love that. And everything you said was one, like if you wrote that down on a list, everything there, like pick one thing. And everything she did wasn't like, you have to paint the 16th chapel in 30 days. It was very approachable and doable. A couple of questions that you talked about, you hear so much about this like blue light. And so like, back in the day, all the influencers are wearing the blue light glasses. Do you think that helps, or is that just more of a like fad?
I've heard a lot of different stories on this. So I think the blue light blockers are good. Avoiding blue light is the best. And I've even
Gotcha.
seen people doing something where they're changing out their light bulbs to be more of like a red hue. And so you don't have any blue light in your house. That goes to more of an extreme. So it's really like get off your phone, get off TV, try to avoid the like really bright, all natural, like unnatural lighting, like the overhead
Yeah,
lighting.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
could like soft whites or like the redder hues. If you're gonna watch TV or scroll your phone, blue light blockers are a good idea. But I think it's more like just try to avoid it. And then if
Avoidant.
you're not avoiding it, use the blue light blockers because you're gonna get it throughout your house
Yeah.
anyways. Like there's just screens everywhere, right? Uh, so I still think that they're useful. I use them. I actually wear them a lot during my workday
Mm,
overall because it helps with my eyes. If you're looking at
yeah.
screens all the time, having my blue light blockers on makes it easier to work
Yeah.
longer.
I know a lot of people wear more for eye fatigue
Yeah.
than anything, but it's so funny. I take notes and I'm like, I had that note. I'm like, I wonder how she feels about night lights. And then you said it, I'm like, oh my God, she's cheating off my paper. It's funny because I have a client who is very hardcore, and she like has this whole like Alexa setting, and she changes her lights all to that like soft red
Yep.
light.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't remember what time it starts to like wind down for her, and I'm like, God love you. I'm like, that rock on with your bad self, because I'm lazy. I would never be able to do
That's one
that.
of those like that sounds great and it makes a lot of sense. And like, is that actually going to work in your life? Maybe yes, maybe no. But there
Yeah.
are some tech ways, like more tech advanced ways to do it to make it easier.
My technology is light switch on, light switch off. I I win. But yeah, Rachel, this has been I loved everything you said, and you were the perfect person because you were just what a regular person can start to implement this into their life. It wasn't this 20-step nighttime routine, this 20-step morning routine, and I don't have to go out and spend thousands of dollars on supplements or thousands of dollars on, whatever to make this work. Like there were so many like one-off takeaways that I could start doing right now, that I could start doing tonight. I could start doing tomorrow morning and not feel like I have to be spending hours buying it, waiting for it to come to start my program. I could start right now with some of the stuff that you've given us. So I, where can people, first of all, your website, I know you said it earlier, but let's just say it again so we can like make sure people understand where you can find your awesome supplements.
Yeah, so you can find all of the supplements on routine.co, which is rootine.co. And you can find routine on social at routine_co. And you can find me. I'm on Instagram where I share a lot of different healthy living tips, really focused on conquering your cortisol, your stress, your sleep, your weight, and more. And that's Rachel SOP Sanders. And then I also have a website that's www.rachelsopersanders.com.
And her Instagram, she's so cute on Instagram. That's how I found her. So she's really cute on Instagram. So definitely follow her. And it's a lot of like, again, it's all the simple stuff that we talked about here. Like we all sometimes need that reminder, right? It's like we know we should be doing it, but then we need that like, oh yeah, duh, I should do it.
Yeah.
But she's been absolutely fabulous. And so what I do, Rachel, is I ask everyone who comes on the show, what's one thing that makes you feel magical?
I would say my kids. I'm having a really fun summer playing with all my playing with my little ones. And yes, they're hard sometimes, but I would say it makes you pause and think about the magic. So having that time and seeing the world through their eyes is something that makes me feel magical.
Now, how old are they?
I have a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Oh, that's a good age. So they're still like kind of
The good
exploring.
and hard age.
Yeah, oh, 1,000%. Yeah. That is it. It's yeah. But then it's like you're gonna fast forward and they'll be like 20 and like 19, and you'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
remember playing in the yard and now you can't get now you're like running away from me as fast as you can.
Exactly. I've heard it, but yeah, no, I think it's a fun age. And it's really fun in the summer to like see how like they're starting to do things and like
Yeah,
learning how to swim and like doing all the things. And it's so fun to see.
like the first time things.
Yeah, exactly.
Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show. And Magic Maker is absolutely, I know some of y'all is stress AF, and it's time for you to not say, this is my life. Everything here is approachable, it's attainable, it's doable. Pick one damn thing, do it. And do me a favor, tell me which one thing you're going to do and screenshot it. And then make sure you share it on social and tag myself and Rachel so that we can keep you accountable. As always, Magic Makers, I appreciate everything you do and for listening. And I will talk to you guys next week.